Ireland, once painted in the world's imagination as a land of emerald fields, music-filled pubs, and warm, welcoming communities, is now quietly enduring a transformation that is reshaping the very essence of life here. For decades, the country balanced economic progress with a sense of cultural intimacy. Small towns where everyone knew each other, cities that bustled without losing their charm, and a cost of living that allowed ordinary people to dream beyond mere survival. But over the past 15 years, a tide has turned. The optimism of the Celtic Tiger era was shattered by the 2008 financial collapse, leaving deep scars in the economy. Even as recovery came, it brought with it not stability, but a new set of pressures, a cost of living explosion, a housing market stretched beyond recognition, wages that stagnated while prices soared, and an infrastructure never upgraded to meet the growing demands of a booming population. Ireland's problem is no longer one isolated crisis. It is the convergence of multiple crises into a perfect storm that makes staying afloat feel impossible for all but the wealthiest. The rising cost of living has become the most immediate and visible weight on people's shoulders. A trip to the supermarket, once a routine chore, is now a calculated mission. Shoppers scan shelves not for what they want, but for what they can afford, substituting fresh produce with cheaper processed food, dropping branded goods for generics, and walking away from meat counters entirely when prices spike. Utility bills arrive like dreaded letters, each one seemingly higher than the last, driven by global energy shocks and Ireland's dependence on imported fuel. Families turn off heating in the depths of winter, layering on jumpers and blankets rather than face another three-digit gas bill. Parents cut extracurricular activities for their children, not because they don't want to invest in their development, but because they can't justify the cost when school supplies, uniforms, and lunches are already draining their accounts. Fuel prices make driving a daily financial strain, and public transport, while reliable in Dublin, remains patchy or non-existent in rural areas, forcing those outside cities into the costly upkeep of a car. Childcare costs rival rent, pushing many, especially mothers, out of the workforce entirely. The result is a daily squeeze where every euro has to be stretched until it breaks. But if the cost of living is the daily storm, the housing crisis is the hurricane tearing through Ireland's sense of security. In Dublin, rent for a modest one-bedroom flat can swallow more than half a worker's take-home pay. And competition for available properties is so fierce that hopeful tenants offer hundreds above the asking price just to secure a viewing. In Cork, Limerick, Galway, and even once affordable towns, rents have surged to levels that make saving for a mortgage an impossible dream. The roots of this shortage stretch back to the post-2008 construction slowdown, when builders went bust and projects froze for years. When construction resumed, demand had already far outpaced supply. Into this gap stepped foreign investment funds, buying up entire housing developments and renting them at premium rates, or holding them as assets, empty yet profitable. Ordinary buyers competing not just with each other, but with global capital, are priced out of their own cities. Homelessness is no longer confined to those on the margins. It now reaches into the working and middle classes. Families live in hotel rooms for months, even years. Students couch surf or sleep in cars. Pensioners find themselves in shared hostels after a lifetime of work. The government's responses, rent caps, subsidies, and social housing projects, are often tangled in bureaucracy, moving too slowly to match the urgency on the ground. The job market tells another story of quiet struggle. Ireland boasts one of Europe's lowest unemployment rates, but that statistic hides the reality of underpaid, insecure, and exhausting work. Wages, adjusted for inflation, have barely shifted in over a decade. Nurses work overtime just to keep up with rent. Teachers take evening jobs, tutoring or working in cafes. Hospitality and retail workers often string together multiple part-time roles, still falling short of what they need to live independently. The gig economy offers flexibility on paper, but in reality traps people in cycles of unpredictable income with no benefits or security. Skilled workers in tech, finance, and engineering, once considered comfortably middle class, are also feeling the strain, their salaries eroded by relentless rent increases and childcare costs. Meanwhile, businesses struggle to recruit because potential employees simply cannot afford to live near their workplaces. The result is a hollowing out effect. Jobs are available, but the people to fill them either leave for cheaper countries or burn out trying to survive in Ireland's expensive cities. Layered over all this is the pressure of population growth and immigration on already strained public infrastructure. Ireland's appeal as a destination for work, study, and refuge is undeniable. It has drawn people from across the world, enriching the cultural landscape and filling vital workforce gaps. But without parallel investment in housing, healthcare, schools, and transport, this growth has tipped into crisis. Hospitals operate at or beyond capacity, with patients waiting on trolleys in crowded corridors. Schools scramble to accommodate increasing student numbers, sometimes converting storage rooms into classrooms. Public transport in major cities is packed to the point of discomfort during rush hour, while rural areas are left behind altogether. Resentment, often misplaced, builds among locals who feel they are competing with newcomers for scarce resources. And immigrants themselves find that the Ireland they dreamed of is not the Ireland they encounter. A place where the welcome is warm, but the rent is crushing and opportunities are harder to seize than promised. The social and emotional toll of this convergence of crises is profound. Mental health services, already stretched thin, are seeing spikes in cases of anxiety, depression, and burnout. Young people are delaying or abandoning dreams of starting families. Middle-aged workers are selling homes not for profit, but to escape debts or downsize to something affordable. Older generations who once hoped to pass down property or savings are instead watching their children emigrate to Australia, Canada, or mainland Europe in search of stability. The very idea of home is changing, less a place of comfort and belonging, and more a financial burden to be constantly fought for. Community spirit remains in pockets, but is strained by the grind of survival. Conversations in workplaces, pubs, and family kitchens circle around the same themes. How to make rent, how to cut grocery bills, whether it's time to leave. Global forces have only amplified Ireland's struggles. The energy crisis, fueled by geopolitical conflicts, has sent utility costs soaring. EU market rules, while beneficial in some ways, limit certain forms of state intervention in housing and wages. The aftershocks of the COVID-19 pandemic have disrupted supply chains, driving up the price of goods. And as Ireland positions itself as a hub for multinational corporations, the economic gains at the macro level often fail to translate into affordability for ordinary citizens. The gap between GDP and the lived experience of the average household has never been wider, feeding a sense of injustice and eroding trust in political leadership. Personal stories bring the statistics into sharp focus. A nurse in Galway commuting 2 hours each way because rent near the hospital is unaffordable. A student in Dublin studying until midnight in the library because his shared accommodation offers no quiet space. A retired couple in Limerick selling the family home just to pay off debts after decades of hard work. A young family in Cork forced to choose between staying in Ireland and giving their children a secure life abroad. These are not isolated cases, they are part of a national pattern. Without bold, large-scale reforms, mass affordable housing construction, wage increases tied to living costs, infrastructure expansion, and strict curbs on speculative property investment, the future risks becoming a one-way departure lounge, with Ireland exporting its talent, its families, and its sense of belonging to other shores.